Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can convert numbers that have these B's for billions and M for millions after them into just whole numbers that you can use to do analysis on. So in this example, I've got Netflix's quarterly earnings going from 2022 all the way back to 2010. And so I've got some that are millions, some that are billions. So ideally, I just want to have the number in millions, so that way, you know, I can easily compare. Because right now I can't really do this. Excel's will recognize this as text. If I try to select all these, you know, it's going to give me a count. It won't sum that up because it's recognizing it as text. So I need to convert that. And I'm going to show you how we can do this using Power Query. So by launching Power Query, I just need to select the data tab and select from table or range while I've selected one of the cells in my data set. By doing so, Excel's automatically going to detect my data set, and then I can just hit OK to open up Power Query. The benefit of Power Query is that, you know, it's going to record these steps that you make so that in the future, if you download similar data, it can just run through the process all over again. You don't have to do this again. So here is my data, just like it was in my spreadsheet. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select this column and split it. So there's a number of ways that you can split it by position, by the number of characters, or by the delimiter. In this case, I'm going to split it by a delimiter because I can see that there's a space in between the number and the letter, so that makes sense to use that as a cutoff. I don't want to use the number of characters just because it can vary. Like here I've got, you know, 945.2 versus here just 1.0. So that's not a reliable way to do it in this case. So I'm going to select by delimiter. But of course, depending on the data set you're working with, it might be that option makes sense. So I'm going to select the option for space. And obviously you can see there's other ones. You can even use a custom one. But space is the one that'll work in this example. I'm going to hit OK. And now by doing so, I've got the numbers in one column and I've got the letters in the other column. So that's good. The next thing that I'm going to do now is add another column. It's going to be a conditional column. And a conditional column in Power Query is kind of like an if statement in Excel. So I'm going to call this my multiplication factor, because what I want to do is basically, if it's billions, I want to multiply this number by 1,000. Otherwise, if it's millions, just multiply it by 1. Okay. So for the column name, I'm going to look at total revenue .2, the second column that I created, and I'm going to say if that column equals a value of B, then I want my result to be 1,000, right? Because I want to multiply this value by this. Otherwise, else, just return a value of 1. If I wanted a more complicated if statement, I can add another clause. But in this case, I just have B and M, so I can keep it simple here. I'm going to hit OK. And now we've got my multiplication factor. Now, next up, I'm going to create another column. This one's just going to be a custom column. And this is going to be my revenue, and I'm going to put in parentheses M for millions. And I'm going to take this value from total revenue .1 and then multiply that by my multiplication factor. So a pretty simple formula for Power Query, just taking one column, multiplying it by another. Hit OK. And now this is my desired output. So 7,900 million is the same as 7.9 billion. Here we've got 1,000 millions. It's the same as 1 billion. And that way I can keep my millions as they are. So 945 million versus 1,000 million. So it makes it a lot cleaner in that sense. So now that I've done that, I can remove these other columns that I no longer need. And this is the really cool part about Power Query. Once you've done this, you don't have to keep these extra tabs or the extra columns. You just right click, remove columns, and now just be left with what you need. So if you were to run this query in the future, you know, it would run through all these steps over and over again. So if you've added new data, it'll automatically do that for you. You don't have to go through this process each and every time. So I'm going to go to Home, Close and Load, and now I've got my output on a new sheet. Here I can apply my formatting, and now it's a lot easier to do any calculations or do any charting, whatever the case may be. And you know, if I were to add more data to my sheet, this could automatically update as I refresh this query. So really not a hard way to do this in Power Query. The key thing is really just splitting those columns so that we've got the number in one, the letter in the other, and then creating that conditional column to determine what we're going to multiply it by, whether it's 1,000, whether it's 1, or maybe a different number. But by doing that, you can create these extra steps and make it a fairly straightforward process that you can easily just run Power Query again and refresh the data if you've got more rows and more information. It'll automatically do that for you. So that's how you can convert data that shows as billions and millions with B's and M's in them into solid whole numbers without any letters that make it easy for data analysis.